7:40, but it is my pleasure right now to welcome in a former Sacramento King, a native of Sacramento, my guy, Matt Barnes. You can see him as he hosts his podcast, All the Smoke. You can see him on NBC Sports California on the pregame, halftime, and postgame show. Matt, thanks for jumping on, man. It's Drapes and Chris.
Fellas, thanks for having me. How you guys doing today?
Good, man. Great, appreciate it, dude. The sun is out. The birds are chirping. It's a great day to be in Sacramento. So the Kings are going to the playoffs, first time since 2006. What do you think this means, man? What does this mean to you as a native Sacramento?
It's important. As we spoke about last night on the post-game show, it just means so much to the city. And I think that's what makes me more happy than anything. Obviously, very proud of the guys that accomplished the feat, and Mike Brown and management for putting this team together, and Vivek and the whole crew. But I just know how much it means to the town, to the city, and what kind of fans we have out there. So I'm just really excited that they get to get a taste of this postseason madness, and the world gets to see again, why Sacramento has some of the best fans in sports.
What's up, Matt? You were a part of that C-Web trade that sent him to Philly. What were the emotions like, not only for him, but just around the team when that happened? And did you feel like at that time, I mean, you were a season away or the Kings were a season away from starting their 16-year playoff drought. Did it feel like the Kings were kind of shifting to a different era at that point?
It was just a horrible feeling. Like he nor I wanted to go to Philly. I remember he said he had a no trade clause, so he could have X'd the trade, but he felt like, if they don't want me here, why am I going to stay? You know what I mean? So obviously he took it hard after, all he did for Sacramento and re-signing and being able to put the franchise on his back. And again, not trying to speak for him, but he just felt a little slighted, so we were off to Philly, and it was crazy. But just looking back, I mean, obviously those were the golden days of the Kings. Rick Adelman and who was the GM at the time? I forgot his name.
Jeff Petrie. Yeah.
Petrie. I mean, they had put together, a very talented roster, and were able to, get Chris Webber there and keep him there for a handful of years, and had some really special moments out there. I think thanks to the referees and a little bit to do with the Lakers, I think their championship aspirations were cut short, over some mischievous calls and situations. But I just remember back then I was, before that I was in college and being in LA and being able to see the fandom in Sacramento and, represent, being a fan of both, but, being from Sacramento, representing the Kings down in LA, and that was no easy task. So it just, 16 years later, it's just beautiful to see that, this team is back with a new identity, a new foundation, and a bunch of good, solid young players that I hope that they'll just continue to build with this core moving forward.
Matt, one of the things I appreciate about you is when I see you on ESPN, you're riding and dying for Sacramento. You're down with the Kings through thick and thin, obviously a native of Sacramento. And I think what this playoff drought coming to an end means for Sacramento is we're no longer the butt of jokes. Sure, people had their fun for the last 16 years, but you got to respect this team. Greatest offense in NBA history when it comes to offensive rating, great coach, 2 all-stars on the squad, an all-rookie player on the team. This is a legitimate franchise and a legitimate team and a legitimate playoff contender. And so now all those people that had fun at our expense, whether it be Lakers fans, Warriors fans, whoever, they got to shut up right now. It's our day right now, Matt.
Definitely, but I think, just like I'm sure always having a player's mind, I feel like they're thinking this is just the beginning. Obviously it's a great accomplishment to get there. But now this new group of Kings knows the only way they're going to make their name is doing something there. Obviously, I think this year more than any year, they started getting the national attention, with myself and Mark Spears and, some other guys being able to talk about them on the national level because they deserved it. But I think, again, being, obviously, I think Mike Brown said it in the post, always wanting more. Sometimes you don't appreciate or, and celebrate what you've accomplished. But I know this team wants more. I know this organization wants more. So a very exciting day to clinch a spot. Hopefully they'll stay in that 3rd spot. But, to me, they've made it. Now, what are they going to do once they get in it? And I think that's what, the world wants to see, in particular Sacramento Kings fans.
Yeah. Matt, I mentioned you were a part of that 05 or 04 05 team before the drought started. You also came back to this team in 16-17 while we were in the thick of it. In your opinion, what was like some of the bigger differences that you noticed just in your two different stops here in Sacramento?
I just felt, being young, the first stop, I just felt like
Right.
there's some stability and a foundation. Obviously what those guys had done in the past and what they were still, hoping to do. And then obviously Webb gets that, has that tough knee injury and
Right.
things kind of go downhill from there. But coming back around, I feel like they were searching for a foundation and searching for an identity. And, DeMarcus Cousins being a little brother of mine, for him to have 7 coaches in 8 years,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just no stability, nothing to lean on, nothing to look forward to, nothing to count on. But credit again, management and ownership for, riding the way. It's not going to be easy. Vivek jumped in this situation, probably not knowing, fully what it understood and what it took. And it took him a while to kind of learn the ways. And then for him to start hiring people that he trusts to make
Right.
decisions and start going out there and doing things. And again, we've talked about this at length, but, really hats off to Monty McNair, for taking that. To me, it started last year, with a very unpopular trade that seemed to be the trade of, the best trade in the past handful of years that literally worked out for both teams. And, so they started on their journey. So from that to go out and surround Fox and Sabonis with some shooting and some extra spacing, understanding that was just going to make them more effective, to bring in a coach who had championship pedigree and experience right up the freeway, and a very defensive minded guy, but also learned a lot on the offensive end. And really just, to me, I think he learned a lot about dealing with players and just that back and forth, because sometimes that's a lost art with, some of the older coaches. So, Mike Brown really refined himself and his coaching style and was able to bring that to Sacramento and again, start a foundation and identity, which this franchise desperately needed.
Talking to Matt Barnes here on the Chris and Co show with Drapes and Chris Watkins. And Matt, we talked with Paul Pierce about this during one of the pregame or postgame shows. It was during that Boston game. I'm a firm believer that organizational culture can come from the top, obviously the front office, but players can impact culture as well. I want to go back to that trade you just mentioned, Domantas Sabonis. How do you think having Domas in Sacramento has impacted the culture and what we see from the Sacramento Kings?
It's been huge because I think Sacramento is obviously a blue collar town, and he's a blue collar star. He's not flashy. He's not talking much. He just goes out there every single night and handles his business, like one of the best in the game. I mean, his numbers this year have been incredible. His double doubles, his triple doubles. I think, if he's able to put another one of these seasons together next year, I think he'll really be in the midst of the MVP conversation, because I feel like he should be in it this year. But I just feel like because it's new to Sac and this whole 9 yards, that I think that he's not getting a fair, look at that MVP conversation. But I think it was a monumental trade. Obviously different types of player, but similar when they were able to bring C. Webb to Sac. It was just a huge landing. Obviously Webb had more accolades coming and, was a superstar, but no slide on Domantas, a 2-time All-Star over there in Indiana, young, strong, smart, high IQ, and really fit in the mold of the old Sacramento Kings big guys, where, one of the best passers in the game. That's what Webb and Vlade and Brad were great at, seeing the floor and getting their teammates involved. And I think, Domantas is almost like a 2K version of that. His ability to get the ball off the glass and run the fast break. And also another thing that people don't understand is De'Aaron's to be able to sacrifice to allow that, because De'Aaron, we all know De'Aaron is a point guard that likes the ball in his hands, and when the ball's in his hands, good things happen. So for De'Aaron to sacrifice that, understanding that it'll make the team better, that was a big step for him. But I just, I can't say enough good things about the team and the culture since he's been there. He's not someone who's very outspoken. I think he's a leader that leads by example, which is important. And and to give another guy credit, I think De'Aaron has stepped up this year huge from a leadership standpoint. Kyle, you and I talked about last year. I mean, he's a walking bucket. He's been getting buckets since he was 12 years old. And we wanted to see the growth on the other side and in other areas. And I definitely think we first and foremost seen the growth in leadership, which was desperately needed, but then also his ability to play defense and get the rest of his teammates involved and just be a good team guy. And I think that's something that he took upon his shoulders, because he was hearing the whispers and the rumors and has embraced. So now he is the leader of this team, along with Sabonis. And I think they lead in two different ways, which is important because you need different types of leadership to have good teams.
Yeah, Matt, I don't know if you saw Draymond's comments the other day, but there's also just been kind of growing talk in general about people in other teams in the NBA wanting to target the Kings in a postseason series. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's fresh meat. You know what I mean? These guys are the new kids on the block, so to speak. You know what I mean? And have had a very good season. They're not sneaking up on anybody. And that's why a little while ago I said this is just the beginning, because there's a huge target on the Kings' back. You know, anytime there's a team that's, talked about the entire season that hasn't really been talked about, whether people like it or not, guys are jealous. That should be us, or we're better than them, or we beat them, or we do this, we do that. So that's why I really feel like, although it's a tremendous compliment for this young team to make the playoffs, the true test starts in the playoffs, because everybody is going to be gunning for Sacramento.
Matt, you know what it takes to win in the postseason. If you were to give some advice to this Sacramento Kings team about the second season, about the playoffs, they may face the Warriors, seasoned veterans, Lakers, Clippers, teams like that. What would you say to the Kings about this experience getting into the playoffs?
It starts on defense. First and foremost, it starts on defense. The game is going to slow down in the playoffs. And although we've been the most explosive offense in NBA history, the pace of the game is going to slow down a little bit. So obviously their goal is to keep the pace what they're accustomed to playing, but it's all going to start on the defensive end. The defense needs to spark the offense, and then closing quarters out is going to be huge. Closing quarters out. You never want to, close a quarter out poorly. You want to try to win quarters and make it small games at a time. You know what I mean? They like to go at 5 games. I think their philosophy is they look at 5 games at a time. So you break down quarters in 3 to 5 minute segments and try to win these segments. But
that's my last question.
It's the little things that are going to add up to the big things for this team. So but first and foremost, enjoy it. I mean, it's hats off that they did it. They made the playoffs, but also understanding this is just the beginning of the journey. So if there's just one thing I was going to tell them, it's going to be it has to start on the defensive end. Everyone has to be bought in on a string, communicating, second and third efforts, first to the floor, 50-50 balls. All that dirty stuff that doesn't get much recognition is how you win in the playoffs.
Matt Barnes, you can check him out, All the Smoke podcast, and on NBC Sports California pre and post game. Matt, when you back in town, man? When we going to have you on pregame again?
I got 2 games in on the road next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'll be back in Sac on Friday, I think it is.
We got to golf soon, man. I've been working on my game, bro. The driver is on point right now. Let's get it in.
Let's get it. Good luck, fellas.
All right, Matt Barnes, thanks for jumping on with us. Chris and Co., Drapes and Chris Watkins, 916-339-1140 as we continue to talk about the Sacramento Kings making the playoffs for the first time since 2006. And it was interesting because